Is we're going to continue where we just left off on your tape a moment ago, and that is the question of Genesis, the origin of things. And interestingly enough, what did we begin with last week? Where did we start? We started with creation, and it was the beginning of all things. Adam, known to you as Adam. Understanding everything is done in parables and allegory. We began at the beginning with the Adam, which is interesting. The next thing that happened in our study was the splitting of the atom. And we saw that allegorically when the rib was removed from Adam. So we had the splitting of the atom. As soon as that occurred, we then saw something different in the evolution of man in Genesis, and that was the introduction of thought, which is represented by Eve. The introduction of the capacity to think, the capacity to make decisions. And of course, once then you have the capacity to make a decision, you also have the capacity to make a right decision or a wrong decision. So then we had the introduction of the serpent, which we understand represented that which was the spine, or that which is the flesh. So you see the evolution from the beginning of Adam, the splitting of the atom, which caused the creation and the multiplication of the species, the introduction of that which is thought, in the personality of this one called Eve, which means life-giving spirit. And then once thought is established and the ability to choose, we then have the serpent, which represents that which is called the tempter of the flesh. You have to choose that which is good, that which is evil. And upon the first aspect of this, the thought process chooses that which is evil, and so we're no longer in the garden. The garden which is in the right side in here is free from all evil thought, so we choose that which is supposedly evil, and actually now we're in that which is the left side or the left hemisphere of the brain. We're no longer in the garden, we're no longer in the right side. And so you see the evolution of things there. Now, of course, knowledge being good and evil is simply because, for the most part, our minds are just filled with so much that there's confusion. And basically that's what this is. So that basically is what Genesis is about. The atom is the beginning of all things. The splitting of the atom multiplies the energy into life. The introduction of thought is the evolution of the species. The introduction of that which is the temptation, because we are now free to choose. We are either going to choose that which is good or that which is evil. And when we then are at that stage, we then enter into another aspect of the evolution of the species. And that's represented by the struggle that goes on inside of us between the good and the evil. And it's represented by Cain and Abel. Okay? So there is a part within us which is the left side, which wants to stay in the thought process of the mind. There is a part within us which wants to return to the God part, which is the right side, which is evil. And of course, what we find right away is that the left side has the capacity to kill out that which is the spiritual side. Cain kills Abel. So all of these things have nothing to do with real people. They have nothing to do with the story motif. The story motif is simply allegory to talk to us about the beginning that was from the atom, the splitting of the atom, the introduction of thought, the evolution of that thought into a position where we can choose either that which is good or evil, and then the conflict or the struggle which starts to develop within us, which is represented by Cain and Abel. Okay? So then what happens just before we get to the point where we're at now is an interesting thing. It says that the sons of God were intercoursing with the daughters of men. And that sets up a real problem, and it's part of the evolution. We get to the point where there's a struggle going on inside of us because now we have the capacity to think. There is a part within us that's pulling us down, which is the Cain side. There's a part within us that's pulling us up, which is the Abel side. The left side and the right side are in conflict with one another. And now there's a tendency for us to integrate that which is spiritual and that which is carnal together. And that's what it means when the sons of God are intercoursing with the daughters of men. It means the divine principles of the mind are actually being used and circulating or intercoursing with that which is the desires of the emotions. And what happens then when that occurs, this equals religion. It's exactly what it is. It's when spiritual aspects develop in your mind, and they're used actually in that which is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. How could that be? Religion has some very good points to it. Talks about singing about God, praising God. Those are all good things. Going to church for the most part is a good thing. Help the poor. Don't do some things which you shouldn't do. And those are all very good things, and they're the sons of God. The problem with it is they intercourse with the desires of the emotions. And so what happens? We're the only right one. The rest of you are all going to hell. If you don't follow our way, you're a sinner. You have to be saved by doing it our way. All of those other people in those other religions are pagans. They're evil. They're under Satan. So therefore, you have that which is religion, which has a lot of good points attached to it, totally involved, which is that which is the daughters of men, which is the emotions and the desires to control and to have you totally tuned into them. So you then have religion or spirit, which is consumed in that which is the knowledge of good and evil. Okay? When that occurs, and that's the point where all of you are at, because that's where we've all come through this. We've all manifested. We all came from the atom. Right from the very beginning. You were a little tadpole swimming up that canal, and then you impacted at the egg, and you became a human being, and all of this kind of business. All of this evolution came into each one of us, and you reached this point. You reached the point where your religion was involved with your emotions. And it caused a lot of confusion. There was a lot of things that you wanted to accomplish for God, but at the same time you found yourself standing with a church or standing with a pastor or not liking this group or not liking that group and so forth and so on, and the confusion came. That brings us to the next point of the evolution of the species, which says that what's absolutely necessary now is for something to occur, and that's why you see it occur in religion, but not properly. The word is baptism. Okay? The confusion is rampant. The violence is rampant. All of these things are happening within here is rampant. And it says the next thing that is necessary in order to purge this away is baptism. It's amazing that educated people actually believe that you can pour water on your head and satisfy the problem. You got all this chaos in here, and they actually stick people and dip their head in water. And you would know that the only thing that will happen when you put your head in water is your hair is going to get wet. That's all that's going to happen. That's all that can possibly happen. See? On the other hand, if you'll understand spiritually where all of this we've studied from, where did this come from? It came from the same place, from that same Greek philosophy that said the 5 stages of human consciousness are 1, earth, 2, water, 3, air, 4, fire, and 5, the new mind. Okay, that's standard almost everywhere in the world, except in China where they have some like wood and different things. You can look that up in your gas skills. This is what's happened here. We've come through the study of Genesis, and in the study of Genesis, all kinds of chaos is happening in the earth, which means the mind. This is the mind. Okay, with all of the confusion, all of the chaos. That which is stated in the Bible says what is needed now is for you to enter into the water. There must come that which is the water. In other words, you must elevate yourself to the second stage of consciousness. That's what baptism is. It has nothing to do with real water. It has to do with the identification, the symbol that's used to identify the second stage of consciousness. You must raise your consciousness, and the only way you can do that, there is no other way you can do it in the world, is through meditation. You start to rise into that which is the truth of what was taught to you by Jesus, what was taught to you by Buddha, what was taught to you by Krishna. You must rise into the second stage of consciousness. When you do, you're baptized. When you rise into that second stage of consciousness, you're baptized. There must be water. There must be a flood inside of you, and it must cleanse away all of the confusion, the interrelationships that you've had with the world, with the systems, and so forth and so on. All of these things have to be purged away. And it only can be purged away by water. So when you take your mind, you enter into the water, which is meditation, you will then find that as you rise out of the second stage of consciousness, you will rise up into the third stage of consciousness, which is air, which frees you from thought. In that third stage of consciousness, there is no thought. And let me tell you something. This is a scientific principle. Here, at this point of the earth, the mind is in what is called beta, about 26 cycles per second. Okay? As you energize and start to move upward into the second stage of consciousness, your mind starts to move into that area called alpha, which is about 14 cycles per second. When then you rise further up past the air into that which is the fire, you go into that which is called theta, which is approximately 8 cycles per second, and then you reach that which is called delta, and you are at about 4 cycles per second. 4, 8, 14, 26, something like that. This is a normal thing here, and the normal thing has to be changed. In other words, what all of this gobbledygook in the Bible is about is that you've got to reduce the number of cycles per second in your brain from 26 down to at least 14. If you don't do that, you're not going anywhere. As long as you're at 26, you're going to be steeped in chaos, confusion, fighting, screaming, turmoil. Kids are going to be against you. You're going to be against kids. People are going to bomb one another, shoot one another, kill one another, because it comes out of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which pulsates at 26 cycles per second. Doesn't make any difference what you do. Doesn't make any difference how many books you read. Doesn't make any difference how good you think you are, how many times you go to church. If that's at 26 cycles per second, you're a nut, I'm a nut, and you're going to be in chaos constantly. So you can talk all of these words, you can talk baptism, you can talk confirmation, you can talk communion, you can talk all of these things. If you're at 26 cycles per second, you're in chaos. It can't be anything, because what's happening, you're getting a lot of good stuff piled in with a lot of bad stuff, and it's confusion. When you get into, you know how you get down into alpha? Listening to a symphony, listening to some quiet music. You can sit and listen to Yanni. Automatically, this thing will kick down from 26 down to 14 cycles per second. Automatically it'll happen. The point and the difference is, and I was talking to somebody the other day about meditation, is that this has to be a lasting discipline thing. The difference between simply dropping this from 26 to 14 is the purpose. The purpose that I say is you must tell your mind, I am looking for the Christ mind. I am seeking the mind of Christ, the Jesus who is within me, the Jehoshua who is with me. I am seeking the mind of Christ. Let your own mind know what you're doing, and your mind will react to it. Believe me, when you start thinking things, you start thinking sexually, your body starts to kick in, and the hormones start flowing around. You start thinking in fear, your body starts to kick in, and the blood vessels and all of these things start. It all responds to how you're thinking. And if you think and you tell your mind, I am seeking the Christ mind, there's a purpose for this, your body will kick in and cooperate with you. So it's extremely important then that you get from beta to alpha, and this is exactly the point of the Red Sea. That's what the Red Sea, there never was a Red Sea that opened up any of this business. The Red Sea opening up is when the pathway is made from alpha over to theta. When you cross from 14 cycles per second to 8 cycles per second, you're going from alpha to theta, and you're crossing the Red Sea into the Promised Land. Okay? And so when you need baptism, you have to take your mind, you have to put it in meditation, you have to reduce down to 14 cycles per second. You rise out of that, which is the second stage, or water, and you come up into the third stage, which is air, where there is no thought. You will then ride in that 8 cycles per second, maybe even drop below that. There is no thought, there is air. That's what it means in the Bible when it says we will rise to meet Jesus in the air. It means you will meet him in the third stage of consciousness, which is air. But that is not what's believed by people out there. They believe you're going to take off like a Superman and fly through the sky. And it has nothing to do with that. It's foolishness. It's foolishness to believe that there's some God somewhere who's going to get turned on if you dip your head in water, or that you're going to go flying through the air like some kind of a 747. You're not. You're going to rise up here out of the water, which is the second stage, to the third stage. And when you get to that third stage, which is air, you're then primed to be hit with what they call the baptism of the Holy Spirit, which is touching the fourth stage of consciousness, which is between theta and delta as far as the cycles is concerned, and that's called fire. And that's what it also means, that the next time the earth will not be destroyed by water. It'll mean it'll be destroyed by fire. It's what's happening right now. It's the time of the spiritual baptism of fire, which is Aquarius. The water part through the baptism through Noah is over. Now the part comes for that which will be fire. And this is all the evolution that you see in the Bible. Okay? So that's where we reach at. When you get to the point where we've gone through Genesis, you've gone through Adam, you've gone through Eve, you've gone through all the garden and the naked and all of this business, and you've gone through Cain and Abel, and now you've got the intercourse of the right side and the left side, all of the chaos here. What has to happen? There has to be the baptism. You have to move up into the second stage of consciousness. You can look at your life, whatever it is, whatever chaos you've got going on in your life, and your relationships with your family, your relationships with the system, your relationships with nature, and you can say right now, I need a storm. There has to be a Noah. Within me, I've got to get to that second stage. And that's up to you to do it. Nobody can do it for you. Not a person, not a group, not an organization in the world can do it for you. You have to decide to do it for yourself. And then you'll rise up into the third stage of consciousness and then be touched by the fire, which is the fourth stage. And these are all just descriptive levels of different cycles vibrations within your own brain, electricity within your brain. You've got to change your frequencies, basically what it's saying. You got to switch from channel 2 to channel 7. You got to switch from the duality to that which is the perfection. And that's what this is all about. So we get to the point in the evolution of the Bible and in the evolution of Genesis where we've had all of the Cain and Abel and all of that kind of business, and then we get to the point now where what's necessary? Noah. We've got to go, and we've got to go to that second stage, which is the water stage, and that brings us to page 5 in the Bible, and Genesis chapter 6 and verse 8. And if you look at verse 8, it said, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Why? Because what does the name Noah mean? It means rest. 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 Rest from what? Rest from yourself. Rest from yourself. Not the people around you because they're screwy because they've never had a rest from themselves. And that's one of the unfortunate things. You can find yourself in meditation. You can find yourself coming to grips finally with that which is within you, but you live in a house where people have never found this. They're running around actually believing this stuff literally. They believe naked people were running around talking to a snake and all of this stuff, and that's the way they believe it, and they take it and they say, this is it. It's not it. It's absolutely buffoonery to take Eastern allegorical symbolisms literally, and that's what we've done. And so now you get to this point where it says, Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord, and it leads you to the famous myth of the ark. And I say myth, and I mean myth. It's mythology. It's talking about a great spiritual thing that happens. It is not talking about some actual man with all kinds of animals wandering through a boat and then going up on top of a mountain. What good is that going to do anybody? Absolutely none. But when you hear and understand this, you realize what it does to you in the evolution. The word Noah means rest, and the Noah energy in each of us is to find a place of rest. And the only time you'll ever find a place of rest when you're able to separate from all of that fear and guilt which runs rampant in your mind. That's the only place you'll find rest. You can go to the Bahamas, you can go to Bermuda, you can go to Switzerland. If your mind is screwy, you'll never find rest. It doesn't make any difference where you go. You're just taking it with you. That's what it says. Jesus said in Matthew, he says, when you pray into the closet and close the door, that means go deep within yourself into that secret place and close the door on all of your thoughts, all of your fears, all of your hopes, all of your desires, and just sit there in nothingness and let that cloud of unknowing take you up into the arms of that which is God. When we were down at PTL years ago, we were into the fundamental stuff. They had a room in there where they had prayer closets. They had 15 of them, and you walked in a door, and you actually physically walked in a closet and sat down. What was the problem? You're taking the same insanity into the closet with you. It doesn't make any difference. You go into a closet, you can sit in a refrigerator and it's still going to be in there. Lunacy is lunacy. And you take it with you. The point is entering into the closet is entering into a secret place within yourself, closing the door so you don't have the worry, the guilt, and the fear. And believe me, there is a scientific principle that you can do. This is a very simple thing to do. Very simple thing to do, and it's keyed to dropping those brain cycles, okay? Now, let's go to Genesis chapter 6, verse 11, okay? The earth was corrupt and filled with violence. What are you celebrating? D-Day. Do you know what it means? What is the earth filled with? This is the earth filled with violence. D-Day, this is a great celebration. What's the celebration? Thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people killed each other. And they were interviewing on television some of the German soldiers who were fighting. They were scared to death. They were hoping, and some of them said, geez, I'm glad they're here. This will be over soon. They didn't want to kill these people. And the Americans were getting killed. And everybody was killing each other. They had no interest in killing each other. They didn't want to do it. They weren't mad at you. You weren't mad at them. There was one man, one maniac, and everybody acted in a tribal mentality, and thousands of people died because nobody had the capacity to individuate. And that's what Carl Jung says is your problem. And it's the same thing today, whether it be religion or whether it be governments. Everybody just follows whatever that one says we will do, we will do. And I'll tell you something else. There was a place in Vietnam where the Vietnamese turned the war around and beat the Americans called Dien Bien Phu. You know, 50 years from now, they'll probably go and they'll have a memorial there as to when they beat the savage Americans who came. So we're sitting here, oh, we gave our lives, we did the big thing. We did our share over there. We blew that place to pieces. And they'll be one day celebrating their great victory when it's 50 years celebrating over who? Who was the aggressor then? So it just depends on where you are or what side you're on. But it says the earth was filled with violence. And what's the instruction? Look at verse 14 of Genesis 6. Make an ark. Okay? Make an ark for when the storm comes. But when do you have to do it? It wasn't raining then. There wasn't water coming all over the place then. It's now, while you got the energy to do it, while you got the mind to do it. Because when the doctor comes back with the report and says, hey, you got this, it's too late. You can't make an ark then. You're broken. If the doctor comes back and says, I have something to tell you about somebody in your family, it's too late. You can't do it because you're broken. The guy comes to repossess this or whatever might happen. The guy comes, you know, we haven't I see it in the company, the new way of firing people. They got great ways, the system. They call people in at about 4 o'clock and they say, we don't need you anymore. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we don't need you anymore. The guy says, well, I'll go get my stuff. No, you don't need to go back there. We'll get your stuff for you. They didn't want you around. Just get out of here. Oh, we'll give you a check. This will cover you for so many weeks. This is the new way of doing everything, you know, and something almost like spotless the way they just. Well, what happens to that person? His life is destroyed. He doesn't. Who's going to pay the mortgage? Who's going to take? That's nobody's worry, see? Just go ahead. Get out. You know, and to me, as far as I'm concerned, every human being, including managers, should be represented by a union. Every single person that ever lived should be represented by some type of a union. Simply because without it, people are taking it. The system takes advantage. The system, the conglomerate takes advantage, and there you're left all by yourself with absolutely nothing. And then it's too late to build the ark. You can't build an ark. Nobody. When that guy tells you you've lost your job and you don't have a job, I challenge you to come and sit down and meditate. You can forget about it. Forget about it. Can't be done. And if the doctor comes back and says, I'm sorry, but the blood test says, forget about it. There's no way you're going to come in here and meditate. And what's said in this thing right now is build an ark now while the sun's shining. Build the ark now while you can build it. Build the ark, and because when the storm comes, if you build your ark now, which is a meditational ark, you build your ark now. When that storm comes, that ark will be a place of safety, and you'll ride out the storm. That's the promise. That's the promise. And look what it says there in Genesis 6, verse 14. Pitch it within and without. You know what that pitch it within and without means? Seal it! Shut the door. Close it off. Nothing's allowed in there. It's the same thing as Sabbath. You're not allowed any of you. You know what? When you take that ark, which is a mental ark, which is the mind, and you pitch it, you know what it means? It prevents all the thoughts from getting in there. There can't be any thoughts allowed in your mind. Because in that holy place on the right side, it's free from all of the thoughts that have scared you. All of the thoughts that have made you sick. All you're seeing in the you following the newspapers, USA Today and all you're seeing is about people who are finding out about their thoughts and all of these things, how they make people sick. And in fact, there's this guy Milken, who was in this big savings and loan scandal. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. He went to jail for a couple of years. He's a multi-millionaire. He came out of jail, and he had a worse sentence. They just told him he's got advanced prostate cancer. So he had all of these things going wrong with him, tried all of these doctors, and he winds up going to Deepak Chopra. And the things are starting to turn around, all this kind of business. But the point is, all you is read about this, and it all focuses on the same thing. Your mind. Jackie Kennedy, what happened? Why did she get this? What caused this terrible thing? Think back. Think of the trauma that her mind went through as she's sitting next to this man getting his head blown to pieces and all of it falling in her lap. What a trauma that caused within her. What a stress factor was set up within here. And then you always say, well, she handled it so well. All you saw was her standing there. What did she handle when she went back in the room all by herself? Nobody knows. And they say, oh, she handled it so well. And the little kids saluting the flag and all of this kind of baloney. What about deep within herself? Was there anybody there? Was there anybody there to show her? Was there anybody there to show her how to deal with that which was eating her alive? Obviously not. Obviously not, because they don't believe that in the religion that she goes. You're not allowed to do that. And so it eats away and eats away. And we saw it here. We saw it here, and I can talk about it now with Dave Preston. When Dave Preston was coming and he was into meditation and he was doing well, and Albert used to take him to the hospital, and the doctor said, why, you know, your cancer is reversing itself. It's going the other way. It's a tremendous thing. It's so fantastic. And then his grandson got in all kinds of trouble down in Atlantic City, and Dave was just stressed to the limit, and bam! Just like somebody took a knife and shoved it in his heart. It was all over. It was all over because it's here. It's here. And all of this stuff is regulated from here. And so this is what's said. When all of this chaos is coming inside of your mind, you need a place of rest. You need an ark, and it's given to you to make. Look at Genesis 6:15. Genesis 6, this is the fashion which you shall make it. The length shall be 300 cubits, broad 50 cubits, height 30 cubits. This is the interesting part. Watch me. A cubit is 18 inches. Okay? If any of you read this book, The Language Crystal, it's an interesting thing. The number 18 in Hebrew is C-H-A-I. Okay? And that's the word which means life. And that 18:9 is used throughout the entire Bible to signify life, because the number 9 is the number of consciousness. 1 plus 8 equals 9. Let me show you this quickly for those who haven't seen this before. Go to page 1010 in the Bible and look at Revelation chapter 13. Revelation chapter 13. And look at verse 18. Here is the wisdom. Let him understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and it is 600, three score is 60, 666. Look up here. 666 equals what? 18. Life. It's the negative aspect of life. It's the lower duality of life. Add 1 and 8. What's it equal? 9. It always comes back to that number of consciousness. Look at the very next sentence in the Bible. And I looked, now here's the other side of the duality. And a lamb stood on the mount, and with him 144,000, having their father's name written where? In their foreheads, consciousness. 144,000 saved. 1 plus 4 plus 4. It's an interesting thing. Take the 1, add up the 2 4s. What do you got? 8 equals 9. 18 equals 9. Consciousness, life. And if you really want to see it interesting, go to page 886 and look at the book of John. John chapter 21. What is it? 886. Page 886. And let's look at something. Look at John chapter 21. Look at verse 6. Jesus says, you want to find fish, cast your net on the right side of the ship. He's saying direct your energy to the right hemisphere of the brain. The interesting point is, how many fish did they catch? Go to verse 11. Simon Peter went up, drew the net to land a great number of fish. How many did he catch? 153. Let's take the 1, add the 5 and 3 together. What do you get? 8. 1 plus 5 equals 9. What's he talking about? You want to activate that which is wisdom and understanding. Cast your energy to the right side, and you'll know, you'll find, and you'll understand. That word 9, and so that number 9, that number 18 is used throughout the Bible. It's the same thing whether in the beast, Goliath and all measured in cubits, because it's 18, which is the number of life. Now, let's look at another part. Go back to page 5 in the Bible, and let me show you something else about the ark, which is important as we go into this evolution thing, and now we're starting to get to this point of rest. Genesis 6 and verse 16, a window shall you make in the ark, a cubit shall you finish it above. The window was in the ceiling. Why? Because when the storm comes, your tendency is going to be to look on what you can see, and you're going to die. You know, the doctor said this is it, somebody else said this is it, and when you look at it, the only way that you can survive in this ark is to look up. You got to keep looking up, and the way you look up is you close your eyes and you get into that meditation. When we do it with the music, or you do it with the earphones, or whatever way, but whatever you can do to allow yourself to rise above the thought. And when your knees are shaking, I mean, when it's shaking and it's scary, I'm not saying you can stay there a long time, but you can stay there for a few seconds. You can stay there 15 seconds. You can shut down and go, and you know what? When you shut down and go, you don't have one thought in your mind. All the thoughts are gone. Even that 15 seconds, it's all that's needed for some kind of a miraculous, beautiful spiritual angel inside of you to come swinging down with that sword of life and cut into you and open you and set you free from all of this stuff. It's all it takes. All it takes. But it has to be done by you, and it has to be done inside of you. Okay? So the windows in the ceiling. Now there's Genesis 6:20. Okay? There's the duality right there. Genesis 6:20 says, of the fowls and of the cattle and creeping thing, 2 of every sort. That number 2 is the duality. That's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. There's good things and there's bad things. You got nice thoughts and not so nice thoughts. Okay? And what are you going to bring in? Look what it says. Of fowls, that's your spiritual. That which flies is your spiritual. Okay? And then you're going to bring in also the cattle. That's your domestic. The domestic part. You got to go to the shop, right? You got to go here, you got to go there, you know. And then sometimes if you're like me with John, I ain't going, that's the left side. That's the duality of it, you know. And then you got to bring in your creeping, crawling things. I don't want to go into that, but you know what your creeping, crawling things are, don't you? And I can tell you know what your creeping, crawling things are by the smiles on your faces. Some of you have some really hot, creeping, crawling things, but we won't go into that. In other words, bring all of it, bring yourself. Bring that part of you inside and see what happens. Don't be afraid of you. You know what's the matter with the religion? They're afraid of what? Themselves. Scared to death of themselves, you know. And instead of being afraid of all of the violence and all, if they want to perpetuate this and wait until they die for the good things to happen. No, let something happen now. Start to live. Energize that which is within yourself. There's an interesting thing. You notice that of the dualities, which is the negative thoughts, you bring 2. Look at in Genesis chapter 7, verse 2. Of every clean beast you shall take by 7s. I don't know if a lot of people have ever seen this. Because all you ever hear of is take them 2 by 2. The clean things you take by 7s. And you know what that 7 is? Look on your chart right here. That's that 7th. Look at that 7th part of the clock. Aquarius, you see it? What's it say there? Spiritual perfection. That's the divine aspects of your life. That's the 7 chakras that you rise up in Kundalini. Take that by 7s. In other words, of everything that's clean. That doesn't mean, you know, every one of us get a little lustful once in a while, you know. Okay, you take those by 2s, but then there are points in your life when you say, that which is clean has nothing to do with thought. You raise yourself above all of the aspects of thought. And how do you do that? You rise up the 7 chakras. What the chakras are down your spine. There are 7 nerve centers. And when the energy raises itself from the sacral area up through those 7 centers, they impact on the brain, throw open the right hemisphere. That's what are called clean thoughts. Those are the thoughts which are the divine thoughts, which you raise up through the spine by 7. Now, here we go to Genesis chapter 7, verse 6. Let me show you something else that's, well, I think it's all interesting. Noah was 600 years old when this happened. The point here is the number 6. It's very interesting. 600 serves an allegorical purpose. The number 6 is that age of Pisces, and if you see, Pisces is that which is ruled by Neptune, which is water, which is the flood. Okay? Do you see it on the clock? Neptune, Pisces, that which is the fish, that which is the flood. And that's what Noah represents. Then what comes right after the flood? What comes right after Pisces? Look at number 7, Aquarius. That which is the age that you live in now. That which is the place of spiritual perfection. Let me show you this, page 865. Okay, page 865 in the Bible. Look at the book of John and look at John chapter 2. Page 865. John chapter 2, look at verse 6. When Jesus was turning the water into wine, look at verse 6. How many water pots were there? 6. It's exactly the same. And you know what that represents? It represents those 6 ages. Look at Leo, Cancer, Gemini, Taurus, Aries, Pisces. They're empty. The 6 water pots represent the 6 ages that went before this age that you're into now, which is the age of Aquarius. They're empty. They have to be filled. And they're filled with a new spiritual. They're not filled with water. The water is going to be changed into wine of spiritual perfection. The whole thing, Jesus changing the water into wine, Noah, the whole thing heralds the age of Aquarius, which is the age that you come in and the age that you're living in now. Okay? So you've got to rise above that 6th chakra. Go back to page 800, back to page 5, and look at Genesis chapter 7, verse 10. How many days would after 7 days the water came? And you reached the place of that 7th. You reached the place of rest. You don't have to do this. You say, how am I going to do this? You don't have to do it. All you got to do is be willing to do one thing. Shut up. That's all that God, whatever it is in the universe, ever said. All I want you to do is one thing. Be still. Be willing to sit down and wait. Focus on yourself and let me do the rest. That's all you got to do. You don't have to know anything. You don't have to have any special. All you've got to do is be willing to sit and wait. Okay? And in Genesis 7:12 it says it rained 40 days and 40 nights, which means it touches the fourfold nature, which is the physical, the spiritual, the intellectual, and the emotional. Okay? You always see that. They wandered 400 years, 40 days, 40 nights. The number 4 represents the fourfold nature. You've got to have that fourfold nature of yours touched by this water. That fourfold nature of yours has got to rise up into the second stage of the mind. Finally, in Genesis 8, chapter 4, it says, and the ark rested in the 7th month on the 17th day. And that 7th month, if you look in your chart that I gave you, is Aquarius. This is your point of rest. This is you're living in it. I would like to go up and swing my hand down and do all of this stuff because it's exciting to me. Like, boom, boom, boom. You should do this. What does it cost you? Look, it doesn't cost you any money. Is this great? No cost. You don't have to join anything. That's even better. No joining anything. All you have to do, you don't have to pay attention to me. You don't have to pay attention to any church or any group or any country or anybody. All you've got to do is start paying attention to yourself. And enter within yourself. And do you know what people find to be the most boring thing in the world? Themselves. They'll sit and listen to anybody that's totally fakakta for hours. On the phone, they'll listen. I think so. Yeah, this is good. I went to him. I know. Yeah, this is wonderful. Hours and hours they're talking to people. But to sit with themselves, I can't do that. And then you wonder why nobody wants to hang around with you. You don't want to hang around with yourself. And that's what you've got to do. It's all here, friends. How long have you been alive? You've read the newspapers, you've watched the television, you've seen the earth. It's a disaster. And it's gotten worse and worse and worse. Now comes the point when you have to go up into the ark and you have to start seeing yourself bathed and purged away from all of that stuff. And the ark rests on Ararat, which means sacred land, high ground. And the sacred land and the high ground is the higher realms of consciousness within you. And if you don't understand that, I suggest that you get books or a book by Carl Jung, that noted psychoanalyst, and read about it because that's where we found it there. In Genesis chapter 8, verse 7, it says, Noah sends forth a raven. You know what that is? That's the negative thoughts. That's the negative thoughts. And it's normal. It's absolutely, this doesn't work. I'm going to die. You know, this is it. This is the worst thing that's possible. It's absolutely normal. He sent forth a raven. Even when you're in this meditational state, because it's still shaking outside, there's no way you think this is going to come through. Then in Genesis 8:8, it says he sent a dove. He sent a dove. He's starting then finally to send out peace. He's getting the message. He's sending out peace. But he's going to have to be persistent with it. And in verse 11 of Genesis, it says the dove comes back with an olive branch. Truth restores peace to our inner being. And look what happened. Think of what happened here. We went through Genesis with the Adam and all of that business. And we got into all of the chaos. We had Cain and Abel killing each other. We had intercoursing between the left side and the right side. All of the things that you and I have done. All of the chaos, all of the upheaval, all of the confusion, all of the fear, and all of the guilt, and all of these things. And then we come to that point of necessary baptism. We raised our mind to the second stage of consciousness. And the storm which set about to destroy us and maybe setting about to destroy you, actually that same storm was used to lift you up and put you on the mountaintop, and when the storm abated and you set your foot out on dry ground, all of that crap which had been trying to destroy you was under your feet. What's wrong with that? What the heck is wrong with that? And that's the beautiful part of this. You've done it all within yourself. By the Christ who dwells within you, you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to join anybody. You didn't have to go anywhere. You didn't have to spend any money. All that was required was you to be still and stay inside that ark until the storm was over. There's an interesting thing as we get to the end of this. In Genesis chapter 9 and verse 21, guess what happens? Noah celebrates being God's chosen person by getting snockered and taking his clothes off. They all do that. I don't know, in these Bibles, they celebrate by getting naked and getting drunk. And he did too. He was drunk and he was naked and he was laying out on the floor. And his son Ham came in. And his son Ham said, "Oh, look, hey, Pop, come on, what is this? Hey, the old man is stoned and he ain't got any clothes on." Well, it says that Ham got in a lot of trouble for that. So, are you on page 7? Genesis chapter 9 and verse 21. And he drank the wine, he was drunk, and he was uncovered within his tent. And Ham came in and saw this. Then his other 2 sons came in and they backed in. They didn't want to look at Dad, so they came back in with a blanket and covered Dad over. It's an interesting thing. Let me tell you something. Listen to me very carefully, because a lot of people misunderstand me, which is, I can't understand how that could be, but they do. Okay, the guy didn't get drunk. All right, it has nothing. The guy didn't even live. All right, never even existed, so he didn't get drunk. What's talking about is you become intoxicated on this new wine, and it intoxicates you from seeing all of the crap around you that is so-called reality. That's when they call Jesus was a wine bibber. Jesus never got drunk, okay? It means that he drank the new wine, which is the spiritual. When we were talking about homosexuality, said, well, if you want to literalize it, Jesus could have been a homosexual. Jesus wasn't a homosexual, he wasn't a heterosexual, he was asexual. It has nothing to do with that. It's if you want to take the Bible literally, as a lot of fundamentalists do to beat up on homosexuals, then you can take the Bible literally and beat up them with the same stuff. I mean, if you want to do that. But if you understand this spiritually, it's not saying this guy was drunk. It's saying drunk and naked means what? I am intoxicated on this new wine. I am not any longer seeing the reality or seeing that this is what I want as far as the lower is concerned. And being naked means you have uncovered yourself to God. You've taken off all of the guilt. You've taken off all of the fear. You've taken off all of the hurt. You've taken off all of the anger. You've taken off all of the things which have been clothing you all of your life. You threw them on a heap and you embraced that which was the bridegroom for this great intercourse of love in a universal spiritual way. So you are drunk on the new wine. Now this stuff means nothing to you. Religion means nothing to you. The system means nothing to you. All of these hurts and bondages that you've been through, you don't want to see them anymore. You stagger around. You can't see them. And you are naked, which means all of that which has clothed you in fear and guilt and your family and kids, you have ripped it off and you come into that chamber and embrace that which is the God within you. That's what it meant when it said Adam and Eve realized they were naked. Okay? The naked part was they didn't have any fear. They didn't have any guilt. And then suddenly they find within themselves that which is prompting them from that serpent or the spine, which says, oh, hey, you've got to have this, you've got to have that. And that's why God says, who told you there was anything wrong with the condition that you were in? Your mind told you. Who told you that there's anything wrong with the way your child is doing this or the way you're doing this? The system told you. A corrupt system telling you what's wrong with you and your family. Is that a riot? A corrupt religion telling you what's wrong with you and your family. Is that a riot? But the God who dwells within you said, who told you this stuff and made you fearful? Who told you this stuff and made you guilty? I didn't. I didn't. And so, where Ham represents, see, the word Ham means warm, hot, and in Egyptian it means black. And you'll see a lot of literalists in the Bible who say the black people have been beaten up because Ham saw his father didn't have any clothes on.
Yeah, I had a woman tell me that was
Okay. No question about it. That which is Ham, which means, I'm going to show you exactly what it means. And you see, what do they think of this God? They think of this God as somebody up somewhere that couldn't figure how to heal you or forgive you unless he tortured Jesus to death. Baloney. Horror. And now he's going to subject a whole race of people to be slaves because some guy looked at his father. Come on, don't even talk to people like that. Just say to them, grow up and get rid of your religion and start loving people. That word ham, which means black. The word black is that which means the intellect. Okay? The word white is that which means the spirit. The reason that this was made to serve the others is because it is the intellect which looks upon the spirit in its nakedness, in its drunkenness, and tries to criticize it, tries to change it, tries to figure it out. And so that which is the intellect then acts as the servant of the emotions and the physical and the spirit, because it is constantly changing, it's constantly challenging, it's constantly looking upon that thing and trying to make it. It has nothing to do with a race of people. Shame on these people that do that, because they've impugned onto races of people and groups of people all this crap, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. When religion mixes with the carnal mind, that's when the sons of God intercourse with the emotions and the desires. You have that kind of stuff, which means black people have to serve people. So, let's real quickly go to, I think it, calm. We're just about to, you're going to have to just put that on, and we'll just, what I wanted to do, real quickly, because I have to just get through. It's only take me 2 minutes, I promise you, because but you're only 10 minutes late, but it'll only take you 2 minutes. Okay, you there? Yeah. Joe? Yeah. Okay, the Tower of Babel. Real quick, and it won't take me but 2 minutes because we've done it before. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but I want to show you what it is. The evolution is this. Listen to me real carefully. What has happened? You've gone through the Genesis, you've gone through that which is the atom, you've gone through all of the struggles as the evolution into the idea of being able to think, and then the temptations and the intercoursing of the spiritual and the carnal side, and then you've just gone through that which is the washing and the purification, and now we come to the Tower of Babel. You know what the Tower of Babel is? The evolution from individuation into tribal mentality. This is the evolution into the whole new thing. It is no longer individuals. It is now the tribe. It is now the denomination. It is now the group. You see what happens in Genesis 11:1. It says the whole earth was one. See there? It's a little different. When it says the whole earth was one, people were one. People were in that which is the God mind. Okay, the God consciousness, a harmony within you. But look what happened in Genesis 11:2. They journeyed from the east. They left the right side. Now we're going to travel. They come to a plain in Shemar, which means plain. The word plain means confusion. They come away from that which is the spiritual side, and they're coming into that which is the side of confusion. And what is their purpose? They found a plain, and the idea is, look at Genesis 11:4. Let us build a city and a tower that may reach up into heaven. In other words, let us build a way to heaven. Let us allow heaven to come to us. Let us allow God to come. Let us sacrifice ourselves to God. No, let us find a way. Let us develop an idea. Let us get a doctrine. We'll build a way to heaven. See? And then it says God came down. It says in verse 5, and he said, look what they're doing. The people won. They've got one language. Now nothing will be restrained from them. Let us go down and confound their language. Okay? So what happens there is, you know what happened? Listen to me very carefully. I'm going to wrap this up. You know what denominations are? Denominations and religions, whether they be Buddhist, Hindu, Catholic, Baptist, Methodist, are designed by God. Because as long as they're split up, they'll spend their time fighting with one another, and they won't damage that which is the kingdom. Confuse them. Let them knock the hell out of one another, and they won't touch us. And that's exactly what they do. This one is wrong, they're evil, they're satanic. Oh, you shouldn't talk in tongues. Oh, you shouldn't lay hands on. Oh, you shouldn't worship Mary. Oh, and they're so caught up in fighting with one another. So they're all confounded and they're all confused. And they still are all confused, and they hate each other, and they don't like one another, and each one is a threat to another. And so they've taken their eye off the mark, and they don't even know what we're doing. They don't have the foggiest idea what we're doing, because they're so consumed in defending themselves from each other. And that's exactly what it was done. Okay? And look what happens in Genesis 11:3. They said, let us make brick. You know what brick is? brick is made out of slime, mud, comes out of the lower parts of the earth. We'll do this, and we'll make this entirely up, and you know, we'll build our way to heaven. But then it says in Genesis 11:7, their language was confounded, they didn't understand one another, and so in verse 8, they scattered to build their own city. The Catholics use white brick, the Buddhists use red brick, the Presbyterians use pink brick, the Methodists use green brick. Everybody's got their own kind of brick, and they say, you can't get there unless you use this kind of brick. And they're building, and they're building, and they're building their cities, and they're scattered all over the earth. They don't understand each other. Their language has been confused, and it is the same to this day. And that's just the way it was made by the Creator. Because once you get people who are divided and split apart, it's like, who said it? A house divided against itself cannot stand. They're no threat to the kingdom of God at all. Because they don't understand it, they don't pay any attention to it, they leave it alone because they're too busy with their kind of bricks trying to build the tower that'll never make it above the second story. And it all becomes our religious condition. It all becomes our religious confusion. And they babble on and Babylon and Babylon and Babylon and Babylon and Babylon. Nobody pays any attention. You're stretching. That must mean it's over. I guess it is. Okay, thank you. We're going to move on next week. We've reached the point now. We've come from Adam. We've come through the baptism. We've come through the development of tribes. Do you see how in Babel you develop into tribes and religions and groups and so forth? Like, that's now, I wanted you to see before you leave. Do you see the evolution here? Right from Genesis, from the Adam, right up to now, we've got ourselves split up into groups and tribes, and it continues to evolve itself as we go into these deeper stories of Sarah and Abraham. Oh, if you're here, oh, okay, certainly you're here. If you're not here, how are you going to know this? See you later. Goodbye. Get out.